Cantina. Want to talk more, excuse me, about sneezing. Uh, talk a little bit more about the new video, two-part series we found from a YouTuber who doesn't do much, but what he does is fantastic work, Nerdonymous, talking about his two-part documentary called Star Wars Apocrypha. And let me explain what Apocrypha is. Apocrypha means, if you're a Christian, books that were left out. Hey, Dave, books that were left out of the Bible during and I want to give you a little story before I go further. You all know who Saint Nicholas is, right? Saint Nicholas, aka Santa Claus. He was an archbishop. He was a kind of a hard ass. There was a group of people within the church called the Essenes. I think they were called the Essenes. And they did not believe in the divinity of Jesus Christ. Now, if you look at the Dead Sea Scrolls with the Gospel of Judas, the Gospel of Mary, and other books that were found, there's a lot of really weird quantum, almost like paraphysical, quantum physics, parallel dimension stuff going on in there that they said Jesus talked about. And those books were probably part of the Christian Gospels and the Word during the early part of the church. And what happened is they were causing a rift because, of course, there's one part of the church that had, Mary, born of with no original sin, had this baby, no father, God's the father, la la la. Yeah, it's also there's extra books. And what happened is the rift is in the church, and it seems as though the emperor Constantine basically was sort of siding on them because, gotta understand, is back then a divine being coming in as a man, God taking on the countenance of a human and living that life was a little bit outside of that, framework. They when you look at paganism and the Roman gods, they were basically projections of humanity's foibles, hubris, and all the rest of that stuff. And so Saint Nicholas was definitely not one of those people. And he was very famous for punching out one of the Essenes. Of course, we know the people that went out the debate were the people that, believed in the divinity of Jesus Christ and the Trinity. But Apocrypha here, I think, is literally pointing fingers at the Disney trilogy, at all this extra stuff, and saying it doesn't really belong within the canonical timeline of Lucas's Star Wars. Okay, so just keep that in mind. I hope I kind of explained it. Anyway, so we're talking, so I watched part 2, and part 2 is about what, Nerdonymous expected to see in The Rise of Skywalker, because, he was firmly convinced that Rey, like a lot of us, was a Skywalker. Likely Han and Leia's daughter, that's the only thing that really made sense. Her being Luke's daughter didn't make any sense either because, the way he explained it is someone took away the memories or clouded their views of who people were. I could see that happening with Rey because she doesn't know what her last name is. She knows her parents. Somebody left her there. She calls them her parents, but who were they really? And I don't know if I believe that Han and Leia didn't remember they had a kid. The way Han reacts to Rey and TFA is that of a dad, of a father, of someone who, you know what I mean. And like when he sees her on the wall on Starkiller Base, that's a look of a proud father. And I think he suspected. I always had a theory that she was kidnapped and taken away. And somebody, obviously got her when she was very young. And she, even if there isn't a dark side clouding of memory and cloaking people, a 5-year-old, would a 5-year-old, you go back in time to remember the things you remember as a 5-year-old, would you really remember a lot of that stuff? No, you wouldn't. I mean, you'd have flashes, and, I assume that she took the name Ray from the helmet she was wearing, and I think that was probably meant. They called her Ray after they were first going to call her Kira, and we know from Lucas's treatments she was Kira Solo. Now, this is where we're going to go. When you get to part 2, if you watch Nerdonymous's videos, and they're long, I'm warning you, you're going to have to take an afternoon. They're as long as Revenge of the Sith together, but they're well worth the time sitting your ass down and watching. What really just absolutely floored me, and now it makes perfect sense, considering Daisy knew who her parents were. It was very obvious throughout the entire TFA and even into TLJ who Rey's parents were, and that Kyle Ron was lying to her. And he was lying to her. He knew who she was, regardless of her being a Palpatine or his sister. Okay. When Carrie died, it changed who she was going to be. They didn't know what the fuck to do. So instead of deep faking Carrie, like they did Tarkin, going along with the original story, and they could have, they scrapped it in the end for Palpatine. And that's why Palpatine, hey Mazeris, and that's why Palpatine suddenly shows up and says, I'm Granddad. And he brings it up in the video. That was one of the major theories. And it just didn't make any sense. Because, think about it. This is supposed to be the Skywalker saga. What does the word saga mean? It means a series of stories about generations of one family. Okay, so now we've got Rey Palpatine. What the fuck? And all likely because Carrie passed away and they felt they couldn't go on with the story. I'm not shitting you. That makes fucking sense. And here's the reason why. J.J. Abrams, if he's got a script that he hasn't written and has the producers riding his ass like a slow racehorse, will probably direct an adequate movie. The actors seem to like him. Okay. He seems to get, he'll do an adequate movie. But if it's his story, he will take it off into places it didn't belong. And when you watch these videos, you're going to realize that J.J. Abrams didn't want to direct Star Wars. He wanted to direct his Star Wars. Do you see the difference? It should piss you off, because it pisses me off. Like Nerdonymous said, I don't care about J.J. Abrams' ideas on Star Wars. I want to know what George Lucas has to say. Because what Lucas says is canon. It's kind of like, no, they don't, Bobby. They don't have any, and so Carrie passes away. And that was the thing. That's the first thing you're going to, that's the first thing. Well, Mazarius remembers that he was writing the script with Michael Arndt until Michael Arndt said, fuck this shit, I'm leaving. And JJ was like, don't let the door hit you in the ass. Whatever the problem was, and it was probably because Arndt said, and I think truthfully, I need 18 months to make a good script. And they were in too much of a hurry. Ultimately, TFA drops the ball because they were all in too much of a hurry. And it made 2 point some billion dollars because at first blush, people were like, Star Wars, Han Solo, Leia, Luke. And then they came out going, I mean, we all remember going to that movie and walking away going, you know, you weren't sure, hey, Revan, you weren't sure what you were seeing, but you knew damn well it wasn't a good Star Wars movie. It's like, I've seen this before, I don't know what it is, and I'm not sure I like it. Oh, I think it is, Trayla. I think it is. And you kind of walk away going, you know, there's something not right here. It was poor use of the legacy characters, and you can't write Star Wars after everything these people have been through. And I've talked about this ad nauseum. What the journey that Luke went on, the journey that Leia went on, the journey that Han went on, and then go back and de-evolve their characters back to who they were. So we have Jake Skywalker, Louis Solo, and Hillary Rodham Organa. I mean, it's like, what the fuck? But that's what we got because they were so busy trying to sell their new characters because I think it was Kennedy. Oh yeah, I agree, Revan. And I think JJ was like, yeah, Ray, hey. That they just totally said, like, we need to do something. We need to get rid of these guys, and we need to do it quick. No thought of how to do it. People are like, you just didn't like it that Han died. Well, no, I didn't like it that Han died. But if you're going to do it, at least do it correctly. At least do it fitting the character. Now, you'll get some sequel trilogy trash human fan, like I'll say Olivia Wilson from the Star Wars discussion page on Facebook. I mean, she is a trash human being from the get-go. She's the owner, and she absolutely hates Han Solo. Now she was never a Star Wars fan till she married her husband and saw the sequel trilogy. She never saw Star Wars before. So her fucking ideas of fucking Star Wars is garbage. All right? When you bring up the entire all 9 movies and how episodes 7 through 9 don't work, she'll call you a racist, homophobic, sexist, bigot, and then ban you from her fucking page. All right? And actually, she went after me because I dared to have a hilarious meme of Donald Trump as my profile picture, just to piss people off. Oh, I triggered that bitch badly. And I told her, I told her husband, I said, you need to get control of your wife because she's nuts. And either that or take your sons away from her because she's going to hurt them. And not hurt them physically, but hurt them emotionally. I don't see how a woman like that could ever raise a decent man. But anyway, I don't hold grudges. I hold grudges against people like that because they have infested the fandom. They've gotten into places where they can control a little bit of their own space, and you're not allowed to actually be a Star Wars fan with them. You can like what you like. Yeah, but what you like destroyed what I like. You understand where I'm going? The narcissism of these so-called, the few new fans that have shown up is mind-blowing. And especially after TLJ. I mean, she's a huge, Ubu baby, Kyle Ron, Daddy was so mean to you fan, okay? Anyway, but back to the part 2. So Nerdonymous goes into Rey's identity, and he goes through a very painful. I mean, he mocks Rey Kenobi, mocks Rey Nobody, mocks Rey Jen, Rey Urso, shit, because it's stupid. When people were coming up and then really just buying into it to the point where you couldn't debate them. Oh yeah, you're right. You're right. Good morning. from to the people down under. You know, but the theories were stupid, and it was like Rey Kenobi doesn't make any sense. Rey Qui-Gon Jinn doesn't make any sense. Rey Jyn Erso, it's like Jyn Erso was fried. Rey Quira, whatever the fuck that bitch's name was from Solo, doesn't make any sense. And that, you know, says really bad shit about Han. But you got to remember, the people that were saying this stuff aren't invested in the original characters and don't give a shit what they look like. I mean, how they ended up, okay? And that was, I think, at least part of the story group's modus operandi, MO there. And then we get into Rey Palpatine, and it was the last one he talked about, because remember, that was being bandied about. And that didn't make any sense, because you basically give the saga to their biggest enemy, to the Skywalker's biggest enemy. I don't know. I mean, let me think on that, and I'll try to answer it. And so he goes into Rey Palpatine and why that didn't work. Then we get into Rey Skywalker. Now, maybe that works, but you have to, I mean, it doesn't make any sense. I'm not a Rey Skywalker fan. In fact, that would have pissed me off as much as Rey Palpatine, for the simple reason, I would think, hey, John 42, I would think that Luke would have recognized his daughter through the Force. If she's that strong of a Force user, he would have recognized who she was. After TFA, and I gotta say, in Lucas's treatments, she trains with Luke in episode 1 in episode 7, not episode 8, episode 7. Okay, which is a complete turnaround of the timeline. But again, they were doing new things. They were going to do new. They were going to, where the emperors. Yeah, you're right, Revan. It did. Where the emperor's throne room crashed, and all the rest of that stuff, and a lot of the artwork was based on Arndt's script, which was based on Lucas's. So if you remember, you see Han facing off with what looks like an IG bounty hunting droid model, his blaster out, in a duster with that goatee looking all I mean, I think that was probably drawn at the time when Harrison Ford had a goatee for the movie The Age of Adeline. And, he's there, and you see Leia and Rey's dressed like Han Solo. She's literally wearing a vest, a shirt, the boots. They're looking out through, looks like the doors of a hangar. You see Rey in another one where she's wearing the dark jacket, the blood stripes. And in fact, the costumer said, at the very last minute, JJ came to me and said, I want her dressed like Han Solo. Okay. When Carrie died, that changed. And the reason why is because he couldn't find his way out of his own ass. But we're talking about Rey Skywalker. There was no indication in TFA or TLJ that Luke ever had any relationship with any woman. Okay. And when you think about it, it waters down the movie, because it's, when you have the balance of the Force, Anakin brought balance to the Force. The Sith take the Force out of balance. Han and Leia have, let's say, twins. You got twins. Han and Leia have twins. Leia's a twin. Oh, I agree, Revan. Leia's a twin. They have twins, Jason and Jaina, and that makes sense. It's a Force dyad, okay? And they should be, and they're blood relatives. It's like, well, if Ren and Rey are a quote unquote LOL Force dyad, then Anakin and Obi-Wan are a Force dyad. Then, well, Luke and Leia are because they're brother and sister. But if a Force dyad isn't blood, do you see how stupid that is? Balance of the Force, and because, okay, the Sith are two, Vader and Palpatine, then you get Luke and Leia. So you got two light side users. One understands the dark side because he toyed with it. But yet, you know what I mean? It just made more, when you go back, now I'm going to talk about Han and Leia. When you go back and look at TFA, and I ask Maze, I went through that movie like I was braiding my horse's mane. I was looking for every freaking thing I could find. Nothing indicated anything other than Han and Leia. It was right in front of our faces, and it was meant to be that way. Here's the problem, and I agree. Rey never should have been one of JJ's mystery boxes. She always should have been their daughter. That's what George wanted. She wasn't meant to be the big surprise, all right? Now think about it. Think about the timeline. She finds Luke in episode 7, trains with him, and then the story grows from there. Okay? It follows a different timeline than the original trilogy. It follows it evolves. And, you know, the idea that she had to be a mystery box is just, you know, it's first off, then they can do anything they wanted, and they did. Yeah, it was. I mean, you know, and he even, I mean, Nerdonymous even says, when Vader says, "No, I am your father," it not only was a big surprise, but it took the trilogy into a different place. All right, it took that story, Luke's arc, into a completely different place, and it worked. When it was revealed, which I think is just as big, that Leia was his sister, that again was another ding in that story. That's how you write good stories, all right? The idea that George Lucas wasn't a good writer, couldn't tell a good story, is utter bullshit. "No, I Am Your Father" was his choice. I mean, he had collaboration with Harrison Ford and oh, I agree, but Jamie Costa isn't tall enough. I mean, one of my big problems with Aaron Douche is he's too short. He's got a big head, and he's not a good actor. I call him Aaron Yuck. Alden Aaron Yuck. And, you know, he's just, you know, he's like, you know, what did I call him? The discount hobbit? I mean, it's like, why? Oh, I know why. Spielberg went to bat for him. Biggest mistake, you know, on a series that he hasn't worked on. Steven Spielberg's casting ideas pretty much died with Munich. I agree, you know, which is why you bring in Michael Arndt only to write the story, and everybody sits back till he's done and says, "This is it. This is it." You know, Maze was saying earlier, "I want to read that goddamn script." I do too. I want to see what he had, because you've got Luke in the Jedi Temple, you've got Anakin's Force Ghost showing up as Vader and Anakin. You've got, you know, Kira exploring the ruins of Palpatine's throne room under the water. Now, Nerdonymous thinks that's Luke, and I think that might be Sammy Solo. That might be her brother. Because when you look at those pictures of her with Sam, that's you know whose son he is. Look at his hairline and look at the look on his face. That's Han Solo's kid. She's Han Solo's kid. And, you know, it's just really, but what they did, I mean, and, you know, when you're looking, all right, let's talk about what he says about Han and Leia being her father. First off, or her parents. First off, Rey can pilot the Falcon. She's obviously had training. Don't know where, don't know how. She has a memory of being left on Jakku. Who left her there? I'm going to say this, because I've said this before. No way in hell Han and Leia leave their kid on Jakku with Unkar Plutt. They just don't. All right. So who did? Now, the story group inadvertently added a dimension to this that could have been used very deftly. The Imperials were kidnapping children of high-ranking Alliance officials. Okay, there you go. Somebody kidnaps her, Han's hot on their heels, they dump her off there. Everybody thinks she's dead. She's completely cut off from the Force and her family. She has no idea who she is. She calls herself Rey because that was just a name she found on a helmet. You know, and see how that works? So, you know, you could have written the thing where Han is wandering around the galaxy looking for his daughter. Leia, you know, is trying her best not to join him, trying to do what she, you know, basically, it's not that they're separated, is that Han, I could see him saying, I'm not coming back without our little girl. And he never comes back because he can't find her. And Luke, maybe blaming himself, just goes off and hides. All right, that makes sense. But something has to be a catalyst for all that shit to happen. And if Rey is the prime Padawan youngling, and Luke gave his niece to somebody and they left her on Jakku to hide, maybe even to Lor San Tekka, that makes sense. Okay? That hurts his brother-in-law and sister, you know, but, you know, I came up with Kyle Ron himself kidnapped her. She was his little sister. He was jealous. He went back and destroyed the Jedi Temple and Luke's, you know, Praxium and snuck her away. And then she was rescued by maybe one of his guys, one of the knights. And instead of taking her back to the family, the guy just dumps her on Jakku. That would work too. Any of that would have worked and it would have made sense. It would have made sense in the context of who she is. I mean, I had Baz Taylor, you know, the mirror scene in TLJ. I had Baz Taylor basically do Han and Leia walking up. When you first see the figures in the mirror, very short woman, very tall man. And then they morph into one, and the man approaches and puts his hand on the glass, and you never see him. That is actually about the only thing that I'd say Rian Johnson, I think it makes it worse. To me, it just says that they didn't know what the fuck they were doing. That Johnson did, because Baz basically had fit Han perfectly into that image. And then Carrie dies, and they wanted to save the reveal of who she was till the end. Carrie passes away, and then they bring Ian McDiarmid back in because Ray Palpatine, because they're too stupid. They're too fucking stupid, too unwilling to actually take chances with technology to do what they were going to do in the first place. And I'll tell you something. This trilogy almost would have been saved if they'd have kept on to the story they said they were going to do. JJ, I think, changed that the moment Carrie passed away. No, Dakari, and if you had been listening, you'd understand why I'm saying that. Okay? So we get Palpatine and Rey Palpatine, which is literally, to me, that was right up there with Rey Kenobi, Rey Jin, Rey Urso, Rey Quira, whatever the fuck her name is, Rey nobody. It's just dumb, and it takes away the Skywalker name from the saga. It turns into the Palpatine saga. And the fact that they were very happy to do it just says they don't understand what they got, what they were dealing with, and they didn't care. Which is probably why Michael Arndt was extremely happy to walk away from this, and happy they let him go, and happy to leave, because, he cared. Larry Kasdan didn't care. In fact, there are moments when he's being interviewed about The Force Awakens and being asked questions, and he's like, keep me out of this. Just keep me out of this. Jaina Solo was a better character than Rey. She was, but at least if they'd have been consistent, Skywalker saga, the big romance, I don't care what anyone says, is Han and Leia. Mara Jade and Luke are EU, and they're not part of the movies, and if you really want to get technical, the EU is not canon. All right? There are stories, there are things that they should have brought out from the EU. There are so many things. First off, the Thrawn trilogy, Heir to the Empire, Dark Force Rising, Last Command, would have been perfect trilogy. Tatooine Ghost, all that stuff. Luke's Jedi Academy. But instead we got this lazy ass, we need to make a buck, we need to turn $1 right now. Iger admitted that's what they wanted to do, and it shows. Because they spent millions of dollars on 3 movies, and what we got was a dumpster fire, a giant franchise-wide dumpster fire. And who's to blame? Well, I think Iger is, because, the buck stops with him. All right. If he had said, we are going to follow George's lead, it would have been fine. No, we probably wouldn't have gotten anything from the EU, but it would have been fine. If Kennedy had protected him and demanded that they follow George's lead, and they ended up at least following it, that would have been great. Then we got J.J. Abrams, who who is a huge, and you can tell, prequel hater, who obviously only wanted to concentrate on the OT. Now, I tell you this, he can scream at the top of his lungs at what a Star Wars fan he is, and Han Solo was his favorite character. I want to grab him by the shirt front and ask him, then why the fuck did you do that to Han and Leia? If he's your favorite character, if that whole story arc meant that much to you, why the fuck did you run him through the mud and back up over him with a semi? Why? From what the video, the first part of the video said, the first part of what the video said was basically JJ was allowed to do anything he wanted. Think about that. Think about it. All right? And no, he didn't. And it's like, you can't tell a Star Wars movie after the fact and not include what George added to the lore. I mean, and we talked about this before. Maze and I talked about it when we were live before. The prequels are every bit as important as the OT because they set everything up. George added the midichlorians because they were a way to show how the Force was able to work within a body. Let's talk about Christianity, the soul. The Russians have videos of people dying, and you can see something leaving the body, a light leaving the body. Miracles, of St. John Paul II. He's a patron saint of cancer patients. Why? One of the people that was in his parish, his first parish, as a young man, had gone to New York to live. She had cancer. She was dying. He prayed for her. He gets a letter back saying the cancer's gone. Cancer's gone. There's what George attempted to, and he did it, I think, quite well, was explain how that energy, the Force, was able to manifest itself within a physical form. Okay? He wanted to bring the wills in. Okay? And we have all kinds of hints about the wills with the father, son, and daughter. You see the wills when Yoda goes on that sort of dream trip that Qui-Gon Jinn took him on to explain how he was able to come back through the Force as a ghost. He wanted to teach Yoda how to do it, and if you remember that, the interesting thing about that was Yoda goes to Korriban and is faced with the ghost of Bane and other Dark Lords of the Sith. And Bane was actually voiced by Mark Hamill. And it was basically having to see, he had to go on this journey in order to be able to reach that state of power and consciousness to get to that eternal consciousness, which is being a Force ghost. And it's very interesting to me that the Clone Wars being as popular as they were among the fans, that JJ, who probably never watched a fucking episode, would ignore all that. Yoda is faced with the wills. You're right, John 42. There is a difference. Yoda is faced with the wills. Remember the white face, whatever they were? And there was they were all different aspects of emotion. You're right, Revan. I mean, and the midichlorians are there as an indicator of future talent in the Force, of future power in the Force, of what a Jedi may or may not be capable of doing. When you think about, and if like you get a limb chopped off, part of that physical manifestation of the Force is gone, which is why Vader, if Anakin had not gotten wounded, let's say like he beat Obi-Wan, he had come back fully on as Vader, he would have kicked the Emperor's ass, because if you remember right, Qui-Gon called him a virgin in the Force. And it's to me, it's laughable when I think about the shit we've had to go through since George sold the franchise. The fact that they fucked up lore so much, the fact that they fucked up the characters so much, they've shit all over the legacy they bought. And as far as story group goes, they meant it. They intentionally shit on it. Jennifer Heddle, she's the head of Disney Publishing for that division, openly and brazenly attacked Luke Skywalker. this fat, plain cat lady. And it's like, and now so we get into The Rise of Skywalker. Snoke is dead. Okay, let's talk about Snoke. When somebody asked Daisy in front of JJ if Snoke was Plagueis, she almost said yes. Now think about this. There are clones. Plagueis has reached immortality. For Sith, that is really, really huge. And he's the one that came out of nowhere. Hid in the shadows, watching Palpatine, which if you think about Snoke watching Palpatine after Palpatine killed him, quote unquote, watching Palpatine earn his karmic debt by seeing Anakin fling him over the side into the reactor shaft and biding his time. See, that's the thing about Plagueis. When you look at the novel Plagueis, the EU novel, Plagueis is very, very, very patient because he feels like he has eternity. Yeah, I've seen it and I agree with it. It's everything I've been saying, Robin. Yeah, I mean, the villain. Yeah, and I'll tell you something else. Okay, so it's like it's not Plagueis. Maybe it's the sun. We don't have any clones. Maybe it's the son of Mortis. Because they did bring Matt Smith in. They have video of him playing the character he was supposed to play. And there's that, and remember, the son could shapeshift. He could be Shmi Skywalker. He could be Ahsoka as an older version of herself talking to a little girl Ahsoka. He could be a bat. It could be anything. What if they brought in Palpatine because that's who the son was trying to pretend to be. He went from being Snoke to Palpatine. Because in the trailer, you hear in different voices of all these different evil villains, I am every voice you've ever heard inside of your head. That is not a power Palpatine had. If you have a regular Sith Lord, maybe Darth Vitiate, maybe Valkorion, but sure as hell would not be Palpatine. Because I don't care who says what. If you were to take Darth Vitiate or Revan and put him up against Palpatine would get his ass kicked. Palpatine's talent was in manipulation. It was in being able to basically cloak himself in what's best for people. And remember, the Germans before World War II would tell their people, it's for your own safety. Yeah, and he was able to do all of that. So let's say, and I think maybe they were thinking about doing this, they bring in Palpatine, but it's really the son, and at the climax, he reveals himself to be who he is. I am the dark side itself. Think about that. And think about Matt Smith in that moment. Holy shit. But again, that would actually have to be the big secret and not Rey Palpatine. I am all the Jedi. The fuck? So, yeah, I mean, I am literally and all this started because Carrie passed away. All of it. We didn't need to have Rey Nobody and Rey No Last Name at any rate. And we all know the reason why. Because that should not have been the point. Rey being a mystery in and of herself was dumb. And the only reason why they kept it that way is because they didn't want to reveal it till the very end. Because they wanted people to keep coming back. And they love the speculation. this is not how you do a Star Wars movie. The reason why no one was speculating in who Luke was is because we all thought we knew who he was until he wasn't who we thought he was. Because Vader said, "No, I am your father." There are people walking out of the theater after Empire saying, "No, he was lying." In fact, John Williams thought he was lying. He wasn't lying. He was Anakin Skywalker. And that changed everything. That's how you drop a bomb on the audience. It's not, I have no idea who I am. So guess what you guys get to do? You guys get to guess and fight and argue and get mad at each other for 5 fucking years. And then at the end, I'm not going to be anybody that makes any sense. And my identity is going to fuck up the entire saga. I mean, that's what they did. I mean, it's like, and in Lucas's treatments, she was never a mystery. We know who she was, Kara Solo, and her brother Sam Solo. You know, what happened to Anakin Skywalker's grandchildren, Darth Vader's grandchildren? You know, how hard is that? And we get Snoke. Was Snoke Plagueis? He could have been. But if Snoke wasn't going to be there, you know, what about the son disguised as the Emperor? Because I'm going to tell you something. The son disguised as the Emperor. That's a pretty good way of manipulating dipshit, or as I call him, fuckstep. Yeah, it was Sam Solo. Yeah, Sammy. You know, you see the art of the girl Kara with her lightsaber out, and see Sam with his blaster. If you can't tell who those two kids are right away, it's like, let's put it this way, the artwork looks like Harrison Ford is a teenager, Sam Solo, and Kara looks like, I mean, she's basically Jaina right there. And one is force sensitive, the other is not. And I think that would make sense. Yeah, I mean, and really, Rey Palpatine is a nobody. You know, and it's just like I said, it's lazy storytelling. It's, you know, all right, here's a question. Does anybody believe that Kennedy saw the rough cut because apparently George had something to do with one of the cuts? And it was the one that JJ had been working on. Now, we have been told through the whole time of filming the movie that writers were constantly going back and forth between where they're with the production and the United States. That they literally had no idea what the hell they were doing, and it was a fucked up mess. All right, and that George had actually directed more than one of the scenes. I believe that. I believe it. And it's very interesting to me. I agree with you on that one, Revan, that when the rough cut was shown, Kennedy shit herself and ordered massive reshoots. Any reshoots over like 10% is massive. It changes the entire movie. 40% of the movie was reshot. And in fact, Daisy recently admitted that kiss was a reshoot. It wasn't supposed to be it wasn't in the script. Why? Because they were brother and sister. Here's something that Nerdonymous brought up. You know the scene where, you know, we got to see Kyle Ron's man boobs? I gotta say this, Adam Driver's literally the most unattractive man I have ever seen in my life. I mean, all right, so she's looking at him, and you kind of get this idea that she's like, wow, you know, he's kind of hot. I'm like, are you sick? Do you have a fever? Are you looking at what I'm looking at? Now think about this. They go on, begin this fight. They discover their brother and sister. All right. You know, that would be a big kick in the teeth. And the reason why, yeah, that's exactly what they were doing. They were appealing to Reylos. And it's like, and that's Kennedy. That's not JJ. JJ hated Reylo. You know, JJ, no, Dakari, it's gone. It's being erased. It's being erased in front of you. Lore Star was right. I've seen others. In fact, Lore Star, it's almost like he was watching my videos because I talked about this. Oh, I thought he was too. Here's the thing. Let's go back to Rebels, World Between Worlds. Ezra saves Ahsoka. What's changed? Okay, this is why time travel and going back in time to change things can be scary. All right, there are paradoxes and everything, and it doesn't, whatever. All right, so we got that. If Ahsoka's dead, Din doesn't take Grogu to Tython, Grogu doesn't contact Luke. Okay? Now, there are some massive geniuses not in the Phantom Menace who strongly disagree. But I think it's probably most has to do with you could drop a bomb of obviousness on these people and they wouldn't see it. You know, they're millennials. They could even be Zoomers. And it's like, you guys don't know how to watch. I mean, Mandalorian isn't that hard. It's really not. Because the retcon is already happening, as Doomcock has said. Here's how I know. We got Ahsoka. Grogu, Tython, he gets kidnapped. Cara Dune and everybody go off to find Bo-Katan and her team, and they get the shuttle. They've got the doctor in custody, who's, you could threaten him with harsh words and he'd tell you everything you wanted to know. It is already happening, Revan. Don't say if. Just listen to me. I know you guys don't ever listen to me, and I get so goddamn mad. So, they got the doctor already. That's a retcon for Snoke. Because he was on the New Republic's list of people they really wanted to apprehend. They get to the cruiser, or Gideon's cruiser, and in the end, they got Gideon, who recognizes Luke, who tries to kill himself. Why? So Luke doesn't realize what the fuck is going on. Okay? They've got the tests. They've got information and all the research that they were doing. And because they got the doctor, they'll know where the rest of the labs are. Ta-da! And Luke's got Grogu. And if you think Grogu's not going to tell him what they did to him and why, okay? Unless there's another whole Snoke factory going on that Gideon wasn't aware of. And now we've got Thrawn. And if you've ever read Heir to the Empire, Dark Force Rising, and Last Command, there were clones in it. In fact, there's a scene in Last Command where they're on the Katana, and he's like, "Get up, Luke, get up here." So Luke gets up there and sees a bunch of dead stormtroopers with their helmets off. They all look strangely alike. Why? Because they're clones. And they realize that Thrawn is able to man the Katana fleet with clones that don't take very long to raise, that turn into soldiers. And, Star Destroyer crew. They have to go to Wayland to get rid of the clones. All right, that's in Heir to the Empire, and in that series. So here's the deal. Since all of you people who insist on this leads right to the sequel trilogy, grr, derp, 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 there were clones in Azan's first trilogy. There were thrones in Dark Empire. And to me, that doesn't mean anything. Because even those test tubes with you saw the bodies in them. You saw that in Attack of the Clones itself. What in the hell? It's not that difficult. It's in front of your face. They were told, Filoni and Favreau were told, fix it. Now, I'm going to say this. 2 years ago, which is what people like to bring up, well, Favreau said something about blah, blah, blah in Snoke, and that was 2 years ago. That was during the backlash when they didn't realize how bad it was. Okay? When they all saw how pissed off people were and how mad and upset they were, they had to go back and fix it. And I guarantee you, Favreau probably talked to Iger and Chapek very, very long hours to get them to understand the sequel trilogy doesn't fucking work. We have to fix it. And if they go into an alternate timeline, and, the sequel trilogy fags can sit there and beat off to Kylo Ren and Rey, fine. I mean, I don't care. Just go ahead. Just as long as you go over there and in that room over there and do it, because I don't want to see it. And they get on with actually creating decent Star Wars. Hey, I don't care, but erase it from the main timeline. And I think that's what they're doing. The Rey Palpatine thing, though, the way, if you watch Nerdonymous' second video, you're going to see why Rey Skywalker doesn't work and Rey Palpatine doesn't work. Okay? A lot of people who are Luke fans will be pissed off at me for saying that. But you got to understand that Rey Palpatine, but Rey Luke Skywalker, within the context of that trilogy, it doesn't work. There's no indication of anything like that going on. The only two people, when you put up a board and say, who could be your parents? Now, Nerdonymous said, well, who could be your mother? You got Leia and Holdo. Holdo? Okay. No, Leia. Who could be her father? Got Han, his relationship with Leia, and then there's Luke. With who? Holdo? Leia's second in command, that one woman that was obviously a lesbian? Who? Well, they're going to go into the Veil of the Force, I think. And they're going to probably, I don't know what, but they have to, but if it ends up being, they have to kill off Palpatine, I'm really hoping that it's Luke that does it. I don't want to see Ahsoka do it, because Ahsoka's not, I hate to tell Dave Filoni, but his baby isn't a Skywalker, and that is a Skywalker mission. Luke has to be the one to take care of Palpatine, no one else. Get him before he gets into the mirror. And I'm going to say this. Luke, at the time of Mandalorian, is a much more powerful Jedi than Palpatine was ever a Sith Lord. Like I said, Palpatine's talent was his intelligence, his wisdom, and his ability to manipulate people. And no one cares about the Lego holiday specials. They're not canon. In fact, I don't ever talk about that shit. I don't watch it. I don't talk about it. It's just garbage. So if we get into the Veil of the Force and Luke and Palpatine are facing off in the world between worlds, and Luke intercepts him before he gets into his mirror on an Exegol, and kills him, yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, that absolutely makes sense. All right. Or, they just use Ahsoka as the catalyst, and they don't have to do it at all. Now, And that fixes everything, because then no one will care about Ray because she won't count. She won't exist. Kyle Ron might exist, but I don't think so. But we'll have to see. But anyway, I've been on for an hour and my dog is begging to go outside. He's in his crate behind me and he's really pissed off at me. So I'm going to take him outside to romp. And I will see you guys later. But as far as who's to blame, it's Bob Iger, because he's the leader of Disney. It's Kathleen Kennedy. It's J.J. Abrams. It's Alan Horn. It's, be quiet, it's Ryan Johnson. It's the Story Group. What? You wouldn't do what? You wouldn't do what? Yeah. Yeah, you're right, Revan. You're right. But as far as who's to blame, it's all those people. And ultimately it's Bob Iger. Bob Iger disingenuously blaming himself for it, but still it's Iger. I mean, Iger should, beat himself with his own arm for all this. Oh yeah, I'll be there. I don't know if I'm going to jump in or not. Depends on how late it starts, but that starts. But I'll be there. I do know that Nick was on Doomcox last night, and I let's put it this way: don't be surprised if you see reviews for you making videos again. Yeah, because he thought she was making money in it, and I don't want to talk about that bullshit. God. Anyway, I'll talk to y'all later. I'll be around tonight on Echo Base. So, you guys, I'll see you around the galaxy. Behave. And let the retcon begin. May the retcon be with you. See you later.